There are only 3 things you need in order to become a millionaire: a source of income, financial discipline, and time. And while the parameters of those 3 elements will vary depending on each person's unique life situation, anyone can become a millionaire with just those 3 things. So today in this video, I'll be going over the exact steps you need to take with those 3 elements to help you reach that $1 million net worth. And don't worry, this isn't going to be just another one of those conceptual videos out there that only talks about having the right mindset and fostering good money habits, etc. No, in this video, I'm going to walk you guys through step by step of a custom Excel spreadsheet that I've built that outlines precisely how much money you need to save and invest each year in order to get to that $1 million mark. So if this sounds interesting to you, then stick around. Welcome back to Daniel's Brew, where I talk personal finance, investing, and career development. Now, the reason I wanted to cover this topic today is because within this past year, with the acceleration and growth of stock market investing, online entrepreneurship, digital content creation, and the like, we've seen a sudden explosion of interest in wealth building and financial growth. Now, some of it is fueled by the massive COVID-19 related layoffs that happened this past year, where a huge wave of the workforce suddenly found themselves in a position to be exploring what's next in their career and life stages, while others saw incredible growth events happening in stocks like Tesla and GameStop and immediately developed a case of FOMO. And for some, the lockdown and the lack of activity available last year seemed to have sparked their entrepreneurial spirit, driving them to try new avenues of revenue generation that they otherwise might not have considered. Whatever the reason, it seems like everyone's developed a sudden focus on new income generation and growth, which is a great thing, but I wanted to focus on the other side of the coin and show you guys how to manage that income to help you truly build lasting wealth. So to that effect, I've built a financial model that showcases a realistic scenario of financial planning that'll lead you to building a net worth of $1 million. And I'll be walking you guys through this step by step to show you how much money you need to bring in, how much money you need to invest, and how long you need to do this to reach $1 million. If you guys want, you can also follow along with me by going to my website and downloading the spreadsheet for free by using the link below in the description section. So with that, let's dive into it. So the first thing you'll see when you open up the Excel file is a very simple pay stub section in the center. You see this financial model is divided up into 3 parts. First, this simple pay stub section, which outlines how much money you're earning and where that income is initially allocated, including how much you're putting away for retirement and other long-term investment vehicles like your 401k and employee stock purchase programs if your employer has one. Then we have this simple budget section here that shows how we assign and instruct the remaining net pay you receive from your salary after all deductions have been made. This is where you direct your money to your expenses and your additional post-tax investment options. And finally, on the second tab, we have your wealth tracker that monitors your pacing towards your $1 million of net worth. And we'll go into that in more detail here in just a second. But let's go back and start at the beginning. So back up here, let's start off assuming that you have a very modest salary of $50,000 a year. That breaks down into $4,167 per month. Now, let's say that in the course of a month, you set aside 9% of your monthly wages to go towards your 401k. That's $375 a month. Then, let's assume that you pay $83 a month for medical coverage through your employer, $25 for dental, and $17 for vision, which turns out to be $115 of cost total per month for your health benefits. Then we have the tax section. Here, payroll deductions for Social Security and Medicare are fixed by the IRS at 6.2% and 1.5% of your pay respectively. And for federal taxes, if you look at this top right chart here, it gives you a simple breakdown of what you owe in taxes based on your income bracket. Now, if you're not familiar with how your taxes are calculated, then click this video here or here, and that'll take you to a video that I've done previously on how to calculate tax. Next, we have your post-tax deductions, and if you happen to work for an employee that offers an employee stock purchase plan, that would be a great benefit to tap into. And for this exercise, let's say that your company does have that and that you allocate 3% of your monthly pay into this. Let's also say that life insurance through your employer costs $83 a month and you don't participate in any more deductions after that. That means you'll be taking home just over 38% of your gross pay each month, which turns out to be $2,577. Okay, now at this point, we move on to the simple budget section. Starting from the top, let's say you rent an apartment or home at just under $1,000 a month. Let's say you also spend just over $540 on food each month, and that your utilities and car payments come out to just over $200 each. After that, you've got auto insurance at $77 a month and auto fuel at $180 a month. And let's say cell service and internet services are $77 each as well. Now that covers your monthly living expenses for a total of $2,345 of cost, leaving you $232 or 9% of your remaining net monthly pay to allocate further to any other individual investment options. Now, let me pause here for just a sec. That last point about covering all of your living expenses, but still having enough money left over to invest, that's critical. The hard truth is that in order to really build wealth, you have to have enough money to cover your living expenses and also have enough left over to invest your money into other ventures. If you aren't at that point right now, and if you're just barely getting by with your income level and level of expense, then you're going to have to make some hard choices to either increase the amount of money that you make or drastically reduce the cost of your expenses. And that might mean getting a second job or starting a side hustle or downsizing to a smaller apartment or home, and even cutting out some of the non-essentials from your life in order to make some extra money. But the point is, in order to build wealth, you're going to have to be able to cover your living expenses and also have enough money to send out into the market for them to work hard and bring money back into you. So having said that, back onto the financial model, let's take a look at how we can invest that remaining $232 in our budget. Our personal investment options are listed here in this section, and let's assume you put $52 into your emergency fund each month, $129 into a Roth IRA, and $52 into a separate individual brokerage fund each month for any short-term investing objectives that you might have. And there you have it. Now every dollar is assigned a role in your budget. Now before we move on, it's also important to address the 5 assumptions that we've made here on this first tab. First, this model assumes that you have a regular steady paycheck coming in each month, meaning you work for a company that provides you a W-2. If you're a gig worker or you run your own business, you'll have to adjust the inputs in this model slightly to fit your particular situation. Secondly, as you've noticed, we didn't include any state income tax in our pay stub section, so we're assuming that you live in a state that's without local income tax. Next, we assumed in this scenario that you'll be renting and not a homeowner, as that changes how we calculate your net worth. We also, for the simplicity of this model, didn't take into account any tax deductions that you might qualify for each year when you file your taxes. In reality, that might actually reduce the amount of taxes that you pay each year. And lastly, we assumed that you didn't have any major bodies of debt that you have in your life currently. Now, debt is one of the biggest barriers when it comes to building wealth. So if you currently do have some debt in your life, now would be the time to address it, before it gets much later on in your financial life stage. Now, let's move on to the tracker. The way this is structured here is that you have your income and payroll deduction investment plans on the top half of the table, followed by your net yearly income and expense lines, and then your after-tax individual investments at the bottom. The table extends out for the next 30 years, and with each passing year, it shows an annual appreciation rate. Starting with your gross income, it's customary when you work for a company that each year you receive a standard merit increase of about 3%, depending on how the industry, your company, you yourself have performed throughout the year. You may not always get this, and it may not always be the same rate, but for the sake of this exercise, let's assume that it's constant at 3%. Next, for both your 401k and the employee stock purchase plan, given that these are both equities that you hold in the stock market, and that the market typically has an average return rate of 8%, at least for the last 30 years, we'll apply that 8% here for both line items as well. Now, here in your net yearly income and your yearly living expenses section, it's important to note that as your gross yearly income increases each year, these numbers will also increase as well, but they'll always increase in the same proportion to the ratio of gross income, net income, and expenses you've had in your first year. So that means if in year 1, your net monthly take-home pay is 61.8% of your gross income, and your living expenses are 91% of that net monthly take-home, then this financial model will retain the same percentage relationship between these figures throughout the years, regardless of how high your gross income gets. And lastly, we have our personal investment section. And starting with our emergency fund, we'll assume that you'll park that into a money market account that yields on average an annual return of about 0.05%. And then for the brokerage and Roth IRAs, since these are likely to be equity holdings as well, we'll input the same 8% that we applied to our 401k and ESPP calculations above. So with that, let's look across the model to see where we hit the $1 million mark. And it looks like here in year 30, we eventually hit $1 million of net worth. And that means if you start off with a $50,000 salary and build and stick to a disciplined financial plan of budgeting and investing, you can become a millionaire in 30 years' time. Now, obviously, a lot can happen in 30 years, but this is actually a very conservative financial plan. You see, in the course of your career, most ambitious people will switch companies about 4 to 6 times, get promoted a handful of times, and generally increase their salaries way beyond the annual 3% merit increase that I've inputted here. So just for fun, let's go back to our simple pay stub view and see what happens if we only change our initial salary to say $100,000 a year and keep everything else the same. So if we do that, then it looks like we've just shaved off 7 years of our timeline and we've hit $1 million at year 23. And feel free to play with the model yourself. This is a very simple model that, I only spent a couple of hours on, but it has all the built-in formulas to recalculate all of the figures if you decide to change any of the inputs in purple. So the point here in showing you guys this model and going over these projections is that even at a very modest $50,000 a year income, becoming a millionaire is possible if you're smart and mindful about your finances. You should never underestimate the power of financial discipline and the compounding effect of time on your investments. Understanding this is one of the key mindset differences between the wealthy and the not so wealthy. So again, if you'd like a free copy of this Excel model, then just go onto my website through the link below in the description section and you can download it. So I hope you found this video and this exercise helpful. And if you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so that YouTube will surface this video to more viewers like you. And if you'd like to see more of my personal finance videos, just like this one, then make sure you check out my playlist here. So with that, I hope this video and this Excel model helped you take one step closer to smart financial planning and one step closer to becoming a billionaire. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time on Daniel's Brew.